We are now talking to author of the Midrange Theory and the Athletic NBA analyst, Seth Partnow. What's going on, Seth?
How's it going, guys? I feel like I'm jumping on a treadmill going 12 miles an hour, just from what I heard before the break from you guys. So I'll see if I can get up to speed fast enough.
Well, we're here to entertain, so I hope you were entertained from that. But that's sports radio. I think
I have thoughts on the Malcolm Brogdon deal if you want them.
Absolutely. Before we get into the Malcolm Brogdon thing, tell us a little bit. By the way, how are you doing since the COVID situation, and how's your family doing? I mean, hopefully nobody has monkeypox, because that seems like the next strand of things. But anyways, how are you guys doing? And then we'll get into your book.
We're doing well. We're actually, you can see, that's not my house behind me. That's not even the Airbnb we're currently staying at, but we're actually on a family road trip culminating in Las Vegas for the Summer League.
Oh, wow.
So I actually get to Vegas tomorrow. So
good for you.
Yeah, no, family's good. We somehow managed to make it through 2.5 years with nobody getting COVID. I don't know how, especially given the amount I travel, but yeah. Knock on wood here. No, everything's good. It's a very busy time of year for anyone around the NBA. I think that's one of those things that is confusing to people on the outside. Is okay. The people think the playoffs, but it's actually like the week the playoffs ends. Heading into Summer League is usually the busiest month of the year for anyone who works in and around the league, because you get the draft, you get free agency, you got Summer League, and you got everyone at Summer League. Everyone's trying to find new jobs. It is a wild time of year, and so it's busy but good busy.
So why don't we get into your book? Tell us a little bit about first of all, what made you decide to write a book about the mid-range theory, and tell us a little bit about the book. What is the mid-range theory?
So the short reason is, when I left the Bucks front office and went back to the media, I thought, at some point I'll write a book. I'm not really sure what about. And then around the All-Star break 2020, the publisher Triumph called me up and said, "Hey, you should write a book." And I was like, "Well, I guess I'm writing a book." And then I got some good advice that, especially a lot of the stuff that I'd written before I went to the Bucks front office, like I had covered that ground, but nobody had read it really, so it was kind of okay to revisit and update. So it's a little bit of a greatest hits album almost, of kind of some topics in basketball analytics. As far as the title's a little tongue in cheek. It's one of the first hip hop albums I owned was the Low End Theory by Tribe Called Quest. A number of years ago, we were some folks and I were starting a basketball analytics blog, and the second place name for the blog was the Midrange Theory, which was like it ended up becoming Nylon Calculus. But I sort of had that in my back pocket, so I was like, I'm writing a book. I guess it's called the Midrange Theory. As far as what the Midrange Theory is, really, it's a little tongue in cheek there as well. With people blame analytics, too many threes, blah blah blah. It's really looking at like what that actually means, which shots have become 3-pointers, and it's not like the Kobe gets the elbow, Dirk dream shakes and elevates for a fadeaway, or Chris Paul getting to the elbow, or Dirk doing the Dirk step. It's the random power forwards who can't do anything with the ball in their hands, aren't spotting up at 18 feet on the baseline anymore. They're spotting up in the corner. Those are the shots that have become threes. And it's like, do you miss that? If you're, the mid-range game is gone. Are those the shots you miss, or is it the stars creating on their own, breaking the defense down, getting to a spot, getting a tough bucket? Same types of players are still taking those shots in about the same amounts. And so that's really what that chapter of the book is about. And it's covering a number of other topics. You guys were just talking about the way the salary cap influences free agency and trades, and the draft and stuff like that. And I just covered a number of different topics that are of interest to me in sort of the world of basketball analytics and NBA analytics.
So I saw that your book had references from both Tim Bontemps and Zach Lowe at ESPN. Also some players as well. Did you work with any players in that book as well, and other maybe analysts like that, and even insiders within that? And what were those experiences like in that case?
So I mean, I certainly from my time in the league, I think I there's a lot of people I could talk to, sort of not to be quoted, but a lot of the stuff is based on both my experiences and those of others. So it's not like, oh, Seth said this, so that must have been something that happened with the Bucks. It's like, no, that's sort of a lot of people used me a little bit as a conduit to get some stories and opinions out there. In terms of players, that's a really interesting one that comes up. It's like, oh, how do you talk to players about this? It's like, well, the short version is you don't. It's a little bit different than baseball, where because numbers have been a part of baseball, and you sort of have time to plan between actions, it's a little easier. So you cannot play basketball thinking. So the last thing I ever wanted to do was go up to a player and say, "Hey, Giannis, you should think about blah blah blah." It's like, no, you go to the coach and say, "Here's something we've noticed about Giannis's game. Integrate, use it, don't use it. Like, if it makes sense with everything else that's going on, you can implement it." And so that's the way that works. So the notion that the guy who's writing code is like going to the star player and saying, actually, you should shoot a 3-pointer on the break, and then the players do that. Like that's one that's always funny to me. It's like, oh wow, what else can we do? So yeah.
We are talking to the author of the Midrange Theory and the athletic NBA analyst, Seth Partnow. Before we get into some of the NBA stuff going on, did you see the new documentary or whatever, new miniseries of The Rise, the Giannis story with his family? Did you check that out?
I have not seen it yet. I think the time I had for basketball media was more Hustle, which I thought was great. The Adam Sandler,
great. That was great. Yeah,
yeah, and I think there's a lot of details that people like to watch, like Draft Day, because it's so ridiculous, and I think they got a lot of kind of the scouting and front office stuff right in that movie in ways that made me think that they talked to people who knew what was going on. I enjoyed it.
The only thing I hated about that movie is, and I don't want to tell anybody the story if they didn't get a chance to see it. The one thing is you were moving up to the draft and there was no draft. It was like you go to all these draft things and the combine and everything like that, and then there wasn't any draft. We don't know where he was drafted. Obviously, we know who he played for at the end of the movie, but we don't know what number he was drafted at. I mean, it was him or Kermit. They were the two best guys at the combine, so I guess he went 1 or 2. But were the Celtics drafting at 1 or 2? We don't know where they were drafting, and that's, to me, I think was such an important part of the movie and where he was getting drafted.
That feels like a minor quibble in the way the movie, it's,
I know.
The end basketball game is more the climax. The draft would have felt almost like superfluous. So I was fine with that.
Okay.
But no, I haven't seen the movie, the Giannis Rise, though.
It's a series, I think it is.
Yeah.
I haven't either. So
I've heard it doesn't have a lot of basketball in it. I'm sure there's some liberties taken, but in terms of it showing like how important his family was to his success and continues to be with him, that's 1,000% true. They're a very close family, and that's been that's been a big part of his success, a big part of the reason why he chose to stay in Milwaukee. And frankly, I don't think he ever really considered. This is not based on any information, just knowing what I know about him. I don't think he ever really considered going anywhere else, in part because Milwaukee has been so good to his family.
Interesting.
So what was your time like working in the Bucks front office, and what are some of the things that you learned in not only working with those players, but developing the way they did, obviously winning a championship last year, and maybe some of the nuances added from that into your book as well?
So the biggest thing that is the amount of information that flies at you when you're making these decisions. Like we see them, from the outside, we see them as kind of two-dimensional. You add all the other stuff, the intelligence, the personalities, the agents, the different coaches or players have worked with guys before. All that stuff comes into play. It goes from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional. And a lot of that stuff doesn't actually matter, but you don't know which are the important bits and which aren't. And so so separating out the things that are okay, well, this guy's a hard worker, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, is that the thing that's going to make or break him? Or is the fact that he can't shoot a jumper and he doesn't pick up skills that way very well, so he's never going to develop one? Like, which of those is more important, but which of those can you figure out beforehand? So I like to say that even moves that we see that don't seem to make sense, there's always a reason. It may not be a good reason. It may not be a reason you agree with, but the person who made that move can always tell you, well, here's why I did it. And, it probably makes some sort of internal logic how they got there, even if it's ended up being a bad decision, all things considered.
As everybody knows, we are talking to author of the Midrange Theory and the Athletic NBA analyst, Seth Partnow. So, Seth, we're talking about free agency and back and forth banter right now with different fans because obviously the talk was the Knicks brought in Brunson. I'm kind of skeptical about this move. I really like Jalen Brunson. I really do. And he did take less money to go with the Knicks instead of going to Dallas for 108. And he is 25 years old. But because of the way the cap is, because of Julius Randle, I'm still skeptical that this is the piece that's going to get him over the hump, that's going to get him to the playoffs every single year. What were your thoughts when the Knicks made that move and they put all their eggs in this basket for Jalen Brunson?
I kind of hate that move for everybody involved. I like Dallas's offseason makes no sense. I understand why the Knicks did it, but it feels sort of like this is a thing you see in the NBA a lot, where a team gets so focused on getting the guy rather than getting a guy that they start to do things like hire relatives and trade assets to move off of not that much money for other players to clear space to do things. And frankly, I don't think it's going to be a great spot for Brunson to have success. I mean, there's notions that he's going to be the number one option. It's like, there's two other guys who kind of do operate in very similar areas of the floor than he do. It's a very weird situation because usually, like, being left-handed means you kind of are attacking from different angles. Right. Well, the Knicks' two most ball dominant players are also left-handed. So it's like, well, who gets to attack off the right wing to drive middle? You can't put all three of them there. So I think that, like, frankly, for Brunson, playing off of Luka was probably be a better role for him to have success than it will be in New York. Now, maybe the Knicks upgrade talent, put better spacing around him, get kind of a more reliable, like, pick and roll partner for him. Then, yeah, sure, it could work down the road. This year, it might not be pretty. It's one of those things, you understand why it happens, but it's just like,
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And on top of that, like, the Knicks are in a, like, where does it get them? Like, how confident would you be of them? Okay, they're probably a play-in team now.
Right.
Are you confident of them being a top 6 seed in the East, given how good Milwaukee and Boston and Philadelphia and Miami and Atlanta has made moves, and depending on how things shake out, Brooklyn could or could not be pretty good. Toronto's going to, those are, I think I just ripped off 7 teams, right, 6 of whom I'm pretty confident would be better, and we haven't even talked about Cleveland or Chicago yet. So it was curious for me from sort of all sides. And again, the Dallas side is you're signing JaVale McGee, you're trading draft assets for Christian Wood, and then you're letting
your point guard.
What you really need is someone to help take some of the burden off of Luka, who is the most ball dominant player in the league, and you kind of want to reduce that some, but then you lose the second best and really the only other reliable playmaker on the team for nothing in return. It doesn't make sense as a series of moves. Like, if they have decided, like, hey, Jalen Brunson isn't worth this much money and we're going to lose him and we might have to take a step back this year, that makes sense. But why are you giving 3 years to JaVale McGee and trading a pick for Christian Wood?